came across an incredible quote by Buckminster Fuller, which said, "You never create change by fighting the existing reality. You have to build new models to make the existing models obsolete." And that is really what I'm trying to do here, is to provide a platform or a forum where we can actually talk about and highlight some of the potential solutions at a systemic, deep systemic level for the crises that we face. So we've been looking at a number of different areas over the last 3 days, and all of these talks will be up online next week. Do visit the website, sign up, and you'll be kept informed about future events, and follow us on Instagram and all of that. That would be fantastic. One of the key things that really interested me during writing that book was, what are the factors that have basically brought us to this point in terms of conceptually separating us from nature and the rest of the natural world? And that is one of the things I'm really looking forward to talking about with Russell Brand this afternoon. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Russell Brand. Russell, thank you so much for coming to do this. Very lovely to see you. Thank you.
Hello, thank you for coming here. Thank you, I'm very grateful. Thank you.
So, before we embark on this discussion, this word consciousness means a lot of different things to people, and some of the associated words that come along with it, like ego. And I would love to just get us all on the same page before we delve into this, to understand what Russell and I both think about this word consciousness and maybe this word ego for a start, just before we launch into it at a deeper level.
I'm very grateful to be speaking to you at a festival, because festival is a bit of time cut aside from reality, a bounded space, a bounded time, a temporary cessation of the rules and regulations and principles that guide us, a carnival, a reapportioning, a different value system. Temporarily we inhabit another world, and it gives us an opportunity to imagine new systems. Consciousness is a complex word, and it's getting bandied about a lot by me. I'm banding it about all over the place. Switch on your internet, there I am, saying consciousness all over the gaff. Don't think I didn't notice that you looked this way on the word ego either. This ain't my first barbecue. So, by consciousness, you know, I mean, we could all get into some Derrida territory about the nature of language, but let's assume we've all got dictionaries. And I reckon that by consciousness, I mean awareness. I mean the seat of awareness. I mean the experiencer of the senses, the experiencer of memory, the experiencer of primal and biochemical drives, the experiencer of the apparently objective and external world. That's what I mean by consciousness. I mean, we could go around, but we're sort of roughly on the same page. By ego, I mean the artificial construct built together from those biochemical urges, from those primal drives, from those memories. A constructed self, the belief that I am me. As long as the primary driving belief in my life is that I am a separate individual in this world, instead of what Heidegger would say, a being in the world, the process of being in the world, non-separateness, oneness, experience and experiencer together in unity. As long as I feel this separateness, our systems will be a reflection of individual. I mean, we've all got little egos, ain't we? You can hear them rattling on the periphery like carbon in a glass of Perrier, bubbling up to the top, entering the digestive system, and what do they come out as? Something comparable to that noise. So, so what I'm interested in is, while recognizing it, this is me. I don't think I know nothing more than you. I know you've all got your own lives. I know what you're suffering now. I know there's people here that are just going through bereavement, grief, suffering, abuse. I know you know yourself, you know your life. I don't think I'm cleverer than anybody else. If there's one thing my life has taught me, it's that I ain't cleverer than anybody else, that I don't know nothing that no one else knows. All I know is how to be this individual. And to tell you the truth, I'm still very much on the learner slopes of that particular game. But I reckon in common with one another, we have some integral and defining things. And I think these things are trying to be born through us. Whatever this thing is that is external to our individual nature, these phenomena that are hard to understand through a materialistic and rationalistic post-Enlightenment world perspective, I believe it's trying to be born now through our consciousness, through our nature. I'm interested in participating in consciousness where we can facilitate this awareness, where we can facilitate this awakening so that we can have new systems, new society, new community, new politics, not founded on individualistic materialism, not seeing everything in terms of scarcity, hierarchy and competition, but instead looking at us as one, serving each other as one.
Fantastic, Russell. An amazing summary, and it touches on many things that have come up in these discussions over the last few days. So would it be fair to say that this egoic sense of, contracted sense of consciousness is what makes us feel separate? And when we talk about consciousness, often people are talking about just this personally identified sense of consciousness rather than something much more universal. All I'm saying, there's a lot of talk in the scientific community at the moment to suggest that this notion that consciousness arises as an emergent property of neuronal firing in the brain might not actually be the case, and that what is going on is something much closer to the mystical traditions.
Yeah, that consciousness may precede matter. Them rishis, them Sufis, them saints, they weren't jokers, those peoples in the laboratories of the mind, those people exploring the outer limits of consciousness, if limits and consciousness are words that we can use, had other ways, other than material means, of analysing the thing we call reality. I think sometimes when I hear of the emergence of the mindfulness movement, hey, you can use this mindfulness to make you more effective at work. Hey, it turns out there's some stuff in these yogic traditions that are valuable, that they somehow knew without access to the neurological scanners, that they somehow knew without materialistic and rationalistic means, almost as if there's other ways of receiving information aside from learning it through material, mechanical methods. I wonder what else lies dormant in those scriptures. I wonder what else lies dormant in those Vedas. I wonder what methods and ideas are laying there, unlocked, waiting for us to stir the sepulchral and dormant histories, the archaic traditions, waiting to be born among us, waiting to be born behind our eyes. What if the thing behind my eyes, behind your eyes, behind all of our eyes is the same thing trying to realize itself out here? For me, to hear everything reduced to an individualistic technique for personal development and personal well-being is incredibly reductive, and it is our duty, our job now, to recognize the sacred once more, to look at new ways of coming together, of looking at new ways of tribalizing, respecting all of our individual rights and all of our communal rights. I'm not surprised they're finding that in science. Science ain't my language, obviously, mate. But I'm glad to see that they are discovering what we have always known. Consciousness precedes matter.
Fantastic. Can we then talk a bit about this notion of altered states and one's desire to affect consciousness, which some biologists are now saying is our fourth greatest biological urge, and you can see children twirling around in circles to go dizzy just to affect their consciousness. At which point...
They're saying it's the fourth greatest, so what we want: food, shelter, safety, sex, and then get off our nuts.
Apparently.
Sounds about right.
And this is observable in the animal kingdom and stuff as well. So
even the animals are at it.
Well, apparently. Yeah,
psychedelic frogs licking their own backs.
Yeah. Okay, so psychedelics, which we've been talking about quite a lot in the last 3 days. Do you see these as legitimate tools within a sort of spiritual journey, or is this just another sort of delusional, sort of escapist fantasy? What's your thought?
Well, what's curious, I think, is it seems that there's archetypal data getting accessed out there, that people are having comparable, consistent experiences in the psychedelic realm, as if there is a common language beyond verbal spoken language, as if there is a language of image and sign accessible we can temporarily suspend our individual nature. What I mean to say is there seems to be a mythic consistency to the experiences people are having on psychedelics, but that shouldn't surprise us because there is a mythic consistency to the experiences we have in our dreams. Why is it that we are so determined to believe only in a rational, stone-cold, hard reality when every night each of us falls asleep and enters a wonderland, tortured and haunted by our personal myths, visited by the demons of our past, offered opportunities to change our personal journeys? I'm not a person who can be lackadaisical about psychedelic drugs because I find them a bit Moorish. But for those who can, I say do.
Well, maybe one of the interesting things about psychedelics compared to other drugs is that they tend not over time. Psychedelic users tend not to use more and more. Their tolerance goes, they use them less and less, which is
that's not how I'd play it, Rory.
Well,
Day 1, the subject is speaking about meeting a shadow self in the form of a feathered winged lizard man. Day 2, subject refuses to leave laboratory. Snatches psychedelic materials from scientist, hooks it directly to own vein. Day 3, subject has cemented door shut and he's claiming now to be Quetzalcoatl, a lizard god from Mexico who will bring about new realities through oxygen. Day 4, Glaxo suspended our funding. The university is under siege. Men in black are playing sirens outside.
Can I just wind back a little bit to something you said earlier? No. It often occurs to me that in these kind of sort of circles within the sort of spiritual marketplace, there might be a little bit of confusion going on about what sort of practices and techniques are actually about improving the ego and self-improvement as opposed to a genuine enlightenment tradition which is about dissolving the ego. And it strikes me there's a lot of confusion in that area, and I'd be very interested in your thoughts on that.
I have to work very hard on the dissolution of the ego, knowing that, like Sisyphus, who daily pushes the rock to the top of the hill, knowing that he will have to push that rock to the top of the hill the next day. Some Sisyphus fans out there. Oh, yeah. Go, Sisyphus! Keep pushing that rock, baby! You've got to learn to love the rock, man. Learn to love your rock. My individual identity is very good at reformulating. I feel my intuition and my education, anything I have that's worthwhile to tell you is stuff that people have told me. So, I can't claim to be the pioneer of this new information. But my personal experience is I try daily to free myself of the limitations of my own ego, only for it to reform somehow overnight. Fear and desire are the primary triggers of my individual egoic experience. When I stay calm and serene and connected and in service of others, I am at peace. When people frighten me, intimidate me, or provoke desire in me, then these structures seem to reassert. And it is curious, isn't it, that the primary means by which our dominant media structures communicate with us are fear and desire. If you are not enough, you can never buy enough. If you are continually encouraged to be afraid of anything from people that are a slightly different hue or do slightly different things in the bedroom than you do, then there's always something to be afraid of, always something to be afraid of. And me continually thinking that there might be some new pair of trainers, some new pair of jeans, some new little triangular crystal thing. This was a gift, actually. I quite like this. That might make me better. It prevents me from being in the moment, and in the moment is where the truth is. In the moment is where what I call God is. In the moment, free from the graveyard of the mind, free from the graveyard of the past, the dead, grey matter of the mind, liberated into the present, free from the projection of the future, present here, the only place that is real. This tent in this field in Cornwall.
So would you say when we look at the appalling things going on around us and the massive need for change within our systems, would it be fair to say that you think that the most important change starts within us all before we can try and heal things outside?
Yes, it must, because otherwise I won't know how to respond when I meet other like-minded people. I need people to wake up. I'm so lonely. I'm so lonely. I need everyone to be awake. I need people to be free because I can't do it. What I mean to say is, on my own, I am ridden with fear. On my own, I'm controlled with desire. I need to be around people that are also looking at the world and saying, do you agree with this? Does this seem sort of mental to you? Do you think there's a possibility we could try alternative systems? Must we force the limitlessness of the experience of being an individual human being in eternal space into the pipsqueak toothpaste tube of binary democracy? Is it possible we could organise systems in another way? If this was all of us, if this was the totality of the world, would we go, hey, why don't we have 2 or possibly 3 parties, choose mostly white male people to run those parties that have got the best economic background, and then the rest of you can vote for which ones you want to be told to do in a very, very limited sphere of possibilities? I don't think so. And I will point out at this juncture that I am a white male and am now not poor. So, you know, I'd be the first person off the fucking stage. That's why I'm enjoying it now.
Can we talk a little bit about your own journey spiritually and what...
Darling, that's why I'm here.
What's your current sort of focus in that kind of... Is there a particular tradition that you identify with, a particular set of teachings or
12-step. I'm very interested in the post-structuralists and how post-structuralist thought aligns with Eastern mysticism, i.e. the deconstruction of previously understood narratives and the re-engagement with the potential for creating new realities, understanding that what we regard as history, what we regard as object, what we regard as subject, all could potentially be different, all can change. So that's where what I'm doing a lot of. I'm listening to like beginners podcasts. When I say this stuff, don't think that I'm like blowing the dust off ancient tomes in some mahogany library. I'm listening to podcasts called things like Philosophize This and Politics for people that don't feel very well. Buddhism for people what can't concentrate proper. Because look at us, we've been deluded. I've had my whole life been pumped up with the idea that this is what will make you happy. Become famous, become wealthy, sleep around. These were the things I was told would make me feel better, and they are sometimes great, great distractions. But thankfully, having experienced that, my mate Matt always says, you're like a person at an all-you-can-eat buffet going, you wouldn't enjoy this, you wouldn't enjoy this, you wouldn't enjoy this. Gorging myself on the gatto of material pleasure, only to peer over my own shoulder saying, be austere, be austere. Pleasure is an illusion, pleasure is an illusion. I've got nothing against pleasure, I've got no opinion. My spirituality is for me. My spirituality is not predicated on telling other people what they should do. You know, if I don't believe people should do something, then I don't do that thing. I don't tell other people they shouldn't do that thing. For example, and this isn't my personal belief, if I didn't believe in homosexuality, I wouldn't do any homosexuality. But I would have no opinion on other people's private, personal lives. This goes for pretty much any hot-button political topic of the time, even though some of them create feelings and urges in me. My spirituality is so that I don't commit suicide. That's what my spirituality is. My spirituality is I find it hard to be on this world. I find it hard to live but under the false ideals of a materialistic society, and I got no choice but to have a spiritual experience. I know what it's like to be a drug addict. I know what it's like to be poor. I know what it's like to be mentally ill. That's my playing field. And thankfully, one thing my experience has given me is the certainty that I got no right to judge anybody, that anyone from any kind of background, up or down, wherever you are on this temporary, illusory scale, that we've all got the right to be heard as individuals, we've all got the right to be respected as individuals, and no one should be placing limits on the experience of another individual. No one should be yanking the chain that connects us as points of attention in limitlessness to the infinite source of all consciousness. So me, I don't drink, I don't take drugs, I try not to objectify other human beings, I don't look at pornography, I try not to eat bad food, I try not to get angry with other people. I slip up in many of these areas, but I'm getting better and better. You should see me driving. If you saw me driving, you don't think, oh, that guy's really got his ego in check. He really recognizes that every other single person in the world is as important as him, that I am here in your service, that what you want has to be more important than what I want, otherwise I can't cope in this world. I have to be of service. Some point, something happened to me where some ingenious, peculiar DNA glitch led me to believe that
my selfishness, the thing that had driven me for so long, has to be put to work in the service of others. That's the only option for me. That none of the things I was told would make me feel better will ever work for me again. I met this Swami once. They're always around, aren't they? The Swamis drifting around. This one couldn't have been more cliched, and I mean that in the most magnificent way. He released a butterfly from his hands when I saw him, and I don't think he even knew anyone was looking at him. That's the sort of shit I'd pull if I knew you were... Wait, oh no, they're... Oh. You see, we all metamorphosize in this life. And did you know that in the chrysalis, the caterpillar don't just grow wings, it deconstitutes entirely. It becomes as liquid. It dies unto itself that it may be reborn. It don't just sprout wings, it turns to liquid in that cocoon, that it can be born again as a butterfly. The ego must die. The individual must die. The old self must die. Wow, is there coffee here? I'm clearly a guy who needs that. The Swami said, thanks. Cheers, brothers and sisters, uncles and aunts, my cousins, my children, my nieces, my aunties, my human family. The Swami, he said to me, the material world's got nothing else to give you now, Russell. The material world can only take from you. It made me feel very frightened because I felt I needed things from the material world. I need the approval and validation of other people. I need fame and money and objects, and God knows I need that little phone, forever checking that phone, forever checking that phone. If they made it mandatory to carry a device that monitored us, told our most intimate secrets to our worst enemies, if they said you must carry this, we would revolt en masse. We would man and woman the barricades. Charge us $1,000. Where do I fucking sign? The material world's got nothing else to give you now, Russell. The material world's got nothing else to give you now, Russell. It can only take from you. It made me feel very frightened, very afraid that the material world could only take from me. Only 2 years after the event did I realize, this means abundance. This means nothing else. There's nothing else for me to be afraid of. No one is going to give me approval now. No one's going to tell me that I'm great and make it okay. No one's going to cast me in a movie or give me a car or give me anything that's going to make me okay. My job here is to serve and somehow be of use to others. And this is something I have to do moment to moment, so it keeps me there. It keeps me there because every day, like our man Sisyphus, I wake up thinking that my job is to make me happy, that my job is to make sure that everything in the world is how I want it. Oh, man, sometimes I think I've got a nerve talking to crowds of people because I'm basically scum.
Could you talk a little bit more then about how...
Yes!
Yeah, we'll get to that. A bit more about how this new idea of spirituality and how we could be related to the rest of the universe, how that could inform a new kind of politics and a new sense of our economics and the rest of it.
Yes, it might encourage us to look at where the points of resistance are. It might make us look at where there are external agents in preventing us from reacting with one another how we naturally might. It might serve as a tool of awakening. It might make us recognize that forms of economic and political centralization do not serve the majority of people. That might be one thing that it makes us recognize, that people all have power in their own individual lives, in their own communities, in their own workspaces. It might help us to recognize that we don't live in some socio-political dichotomy between left-wing and right-wing politics, that some indigenous people, regard that merely as two sides of the same coin, that there might be entirely new ways of relating to our own consciousness, our planet, and one another. That there are limitless systems, limitless ways of organizing, limitless ways of respecting ourselves, one another, and the planet, and people that say that there aren't, and that we've happened upon the best potential system already, and we're just dialing up and dialing down, those people have a vested interest in preserving the systems exactly as they are. No one will tell you that if they're suffering enough. No one will tell you that if they really need change in their own lives. I believe in the possibility of that, and I suppose an alteration or a transition in individual consciousness can't but help for us to see the multivariance of the way that things can be organized. Recognize your individual ingenuity. Recognize that you don't need any external resource to tell you what to do. That impulse to attach our identity to anything from these ripped jeans to this crystal thing again, to this, even this bloody spiritual beard that I'm now worried about cutting off in case it makes me less spiritual in some weird Samsonian sense, that every external thing becomes a kind of prison to us. That's what I feel like. I feel like I want to get myself free, do the shit I'm good at, and be very open to listening to other people with their own experiences. I know what it's like when you lose a partner. I know what it's like when you lose a kid. I know what it's like to grow up poor. I'm just listening to some dude who knows what it's like to be fucking kidnapped by the Taliban. There's so much information and experience and data available. Limitless data, but only a limited resource to understand data. Unless we have access to our non-individual, non-personified mind, limitless consciousness, prayer, meditation, nothing that complicated, we're going to live within narrow ruts. But prayer, meditation, and possibly those psychedelics that you were all mentioning earlier, fasting and forms of ritualized spiritual experience, give us access to new planes of data. The first thing I realized is, I'm not who I thought I was. That's not who I am. I'm not him. Who were you, says Muji, before you had your name? Who were you before you had your name? I've got young children, a 2-year-old and a 1-year-old. I'm thinking, I ask them, where were you? Where were you before you were born? Tell me about the limitlessness. Social services have stepped in.
So would you agree that many of these systems that need changing can't actually be incrementally optimized into what we need? They have to be developed from the ground up as entirely fresh new systems.
I do believe that, Rory, but I wouldn't want to diminish the efforts and travails of the many people who work very, very hard in those fields. And so, I guess we just got to do what we got to do. If you're
Absolutely.
a dedicated member of Momentum, for example, or, some other political party, then you've got to do your thing. I don't bloody know. I'm making all this shit up.
No.
But like me personally, I feel like I keep hearing from people like Daniel Pinchbeck, who we both know, create your own systems. Like that dude who designed that place near here, but what's his name? Buckminster Fuller. Start to emulate nature, inner and outer. No right angles in nature, said that Buckminster Fuller. In nature, how would we live? How would we tribalize? How would we treat each other? I know that this is what I think. I know that savagery is part of human nature, but I think that we've been instructed that it has a more dominant role than it does in order to keep us trapped in individual conflict with one another and make us more malleable and to turn us from the point we're born into workers and consumers instead of free citizens, free whatever it is we would be, free beings. So I feel that we should emulate the indigenous anthropological conditions of apes like us, continue our technological and scientific discoveries, continue our inward journey through psychedelics, prayer and meditation, and afford people a greater role in life than just being an economic unit, a participant in a consumerist capitalist system that cannot care about individual freedom because it is predicated on its own perpetual growth. I'm not an economist, but I heard those words before and they made sense then, and I hope they make sense now. My sense is that... Yeah, go on, you can step in now, mate. It's a nice festival, isn't it?
It's a wonderful festival.
But this is the last one.
Well, apparently.
Economic reasons?
I can't comment
Will be.
on that.
Same with everything. Music, football, everything. You see economics. You see the icy hand. You see it seeping in like ink, controlling, sanitizing, commodifying, subtracting. Not that I don't like the iPhone. I'm not complaining. Just it'd be nice if there were less child miners involved. I didn't mean miners with an O. I meant like literal get copper miners.
It's interesting you bring up the Indigenous Society example because Bruce Parry gave a fantastic talk here on Friday evening, and I was just talking to him this morning up in the round room. And one of the many sort of interesting insights and takeaways from that was this tribe, the Penan, he lived with in Borneo, who are the last remaining nomadic hunter-gatherers. There's only 300 of them left. And they made the biggest impression on him of all the tribes that he worked with over making those 3 series for the BBC. And there was something, what was extraordinary about them is that they are the most peaceful but anarchic society on the planet. And normally you don't see those two words put together. But what these nomadic hunter-gatherers, rather than just hunter-gatherers who've actually settled, nomadic hunter-gatherers with no ownership and no sense of competition, were actually the most peaceful people he'd ever come across. And I just think, although it could seem very romantic, this notion of trying to bring those attributes into our society now, I do think it's pertinent, and that we should actually, before these indigenous people are completely wiped off the face of the earth, actually sort of take some note of what they've got to, what they represent and embody.
Yes. And of course, romanticism and the imagination, these are not dirty words. It's one of our greatest gifts, the imagination, romanticism, to dream different dreams. They're always using the hard edge of pragmatism to shut down the potential journeys into new spaces. I'm not suggesting we all live in some airy-fairy, silly-billy wonderland. We've got to get food on the bloody table. We've got to save the planet. It's going to be difficult. But for me, spirituality is entirely practical. I can't cope without it. We are alive. We are going to die. Everyone we love is going to die. You better give me some fucking coping techniques. I'm going to freak out.
So this new spirituality to which we're pointing towards, would you say that it's something like dogma and gurus and teachers in the classical sense are now redundant? Is that what it's like?
Bloody hope not, mate, so I'm out of a living. No, I'm only joking. What I suppose so, isn't it? Like good teachers tell you, you knew anyway. Someone told me the last words of the Bhagavad Gita after that limitless spiraling verse, after that beauty, after delving into the dimensions that can't be held in the simple mind of an individual, after Arjuna and Krishna chat about what it is to be alive and to die and to be in that continual battle with the material world, that at the end of it, Arjuna inhales and says, I remember. We all know already. There's no one in here requiring salvation. Sometimes don't you see the perennialism? Don't you see the truth, the universal truth across all things? The Christians are right. Christ will come again, but Christ will be resurrected in the consciousness of the individual. What relevance is it if he died on the cross 2,000 years ago to be born 3 days later if Christ isn't reborn moment to moment in limitless consciousness, access to limitless consciousness in the individual, the awakening rapture of being present in the moment? The Muslims are right. The last prophecy has been received. We know everything we need to know now. The Buddhists are right. Stay present continually in the moment. Free yourself from the wheel. There are certain perennial truths, and someone told me, an expert in theology and all that kind of gear, told me that there is a perennial continuum between the messages of prophets. Similarly, a perennial continuum in the process of institutionalization that follows them. As religious organizations become interested in power and managing resources, whether that resources is the imagination of individuals or property as we understand it, there's a recognizable process that occurs. Yeah, why my personal spirituality is based on being broken, is based on being fallen, recognizing that on my own I can't cope, on my own I will drink and take drugs until I'm dead, believing that it's possible to live another way, being willing to accept help and guidance from other people because it's everyone here has access to it. There's not any one person that has access to the limitless. I was told God has no grandchildren. And whether you believe in a conventional God or not, I think that's meant to mean we all have our own connection to the divine. We all have our own connection to the sacred. So I don't need to buy it from Apple or from Sony or be told it by a robed, peculiarly androgynously dressed male as if to transcend gender in that role, to be free of the binary duality that is rendered unto us. We, the breeding ape-like humans, look at us. To transcend in religious garb, to find access to the realms beyond the heard and the unheard, the realms beyond the word and the unword, the realms beyond the language. We have to find our way to the individual truth. We have to find our way to the unique access that is possible and accessible to all of us. So I'm not down with the gurudom or the inculcation and the indoctrination or the pedagogy of people with vested interests. I'm interested in hearing what you all know. I won't be listening to it now because I'm too busy talking.
Well, in fact, maybe we have got time to take one or two questions in a moment, but just one last question I'd like to ask you, because we've talked about psychedelics and you've spoken about addiction and recovery. This whole conversation around decriminalization and legalization, what are your current positions on that?
That makes me so important, like I'd have a current position. My current position, yeah, I think let people do what they want and have the necessary medical and psychotherapeutic help for people like me that just shouldn't ever take drugs one day at a time. But for people who can, you know, that's just none of my business, and I don't think that the state has any business intervening in the consciousness of people. That's an odd rule. It's an odd rule to criminalise people, and you only need glance at what, you know, there's enough documentaries out there to tell you how those laws are manipulated.
Great.
Let people do what they want.
Okay, so, thank you. 5 minutes for one or two questions.
Only children.
Only children.
The children.
Any questions? A question just here.
Are you a children? No, you can answer. Yeah,
Can you speak,
you're
speak
moderating.
loudly? Or
Do I want to come? I can hear. This lady says, do I want to come to your house for tea? Where is it and what type of tea, mate? Huh? Is it near here? And do you have oat milk? I'll take it. Thank you.
One more question down here at the front.
I met that Donald Trump, mate. I met him. And look, might be controversial. I don't think that there's any room for hatred anymore. I think we're going to need a stronger fuel. We're going to need a stronger fuel than oppositionism. We've become used to standing on the sidelines, barraging people. They're just children. They're all going to die. I mean, you know, we don't have to hang out with people unless we vibe with them, do we? This is your planet, mate. You don't need to worry too much about Donald Trump. Donald Trump is transient. Some of him's turning into vapor before our very eyes. You're allowed little cheeky jokes. Can have a little cheeky joke here and there.
Another question.
Look at your beautiful face. You're going to do wonderful things. Do I want your hat? Yeah. Thanks. I'll sign the hat. Ow. It's quite a hard surface to write on. Can you sort of spread it out, as it were, to create a more forgiving surface? Thank you. And I'll just write Russell on that beautiful hat. You're a beautiful, beautiful young person. I adore you. There's your... I nearly nicked his pen. Go on, son.
Another question here.
I know it's tough. What's your name? Isaac. Zach's asking, how do you have a planet with a population of 7 billion people living in accordance with Rory's pie-in-the-sky ideas about romantic, let's all just kiss and cuddle and eat vegetables? Nomadism. Yeah. How do you? But what I would invite you to consider, Zach, is we are far from competing with... we're not competing with perfection. We're competing with corruption. We're competing with suffering. We're competing with subjugation. We're competing with people all over the world being maligned and neglected, and now is an opportunity to try new systems, new ideas, to embrace the novel. And so I say, let's all follow Rory into an anthropological, nomadic realm of shamanism. Bring down the new realms. Liberate yourself, young people. Liberate yourself from the tyranny. It will be born in you. It's coming through. Free yourself of limitation, you beautiful young man. How can you feel anything but optimism with that wonderful face?
The lady in the hat at the back.
Sister. Well, our friend asked, how do you feel about having children in the current climate crisis? Frankly, having children, it all seems like a pain in the arse now. I've got 2 of them. But I understand. Look, do you know one thing I will say? I know that we have to individually awaken, but I think the tendency to place culpability on individuals like, hey, you guys better, make sure you don't use any plastic bottles. Of course we shouldn't use plastic bottles, but how long would it take to create regulation that says, you motherfucker... Old Russell. No longer are you allowed to use plastic bottles, and no longer are you allowed to increase your prices to put the burden on what you call the consumer, but are awakened citizens. Oh, we can't use just glass bottles, we can't use recyclable things, it will put the burden on the consumer. Not with this fucking regulation, it won't. You can't do that. That's over. No more fossil fuels. These rules, we place rules on the powerful, not on individuals. So me, I want to fill this world with children. But my wife, however, for all her knowledge of hypnobirthing and how to bring out, as far as I can see, the most immaculate of daughters, may have a different opinion. But I recognize your concern. I recognize that for you that feels like an important moral point. But we've got to create more and more awakened people. We must. It's our duty to procreate. I'm only sorry I can't help anymore.
And one more question. The lady at the back is just standing up. Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, two more questions.
I don't have the right type of personality to be a prime minister in a bipartisan Western democracy that exists primarily to serve the interests of corporate elites and is bound by bureaucracy. I would like to be a real representative of people. I would like to participate in the ingenuity of young people like Zach with his pragmatism. Orange hat, beautiful boy here. All of you bright young people, I want to do the stuff I'm good at. If there's a political dimension to that, then believe me, I will ferociously embrace it. But I don't want to see novelty and ingenuity squeezed into mahogany and green leather institutions that can do nothing but spit out corruption and limitation, because that is what they're designed to do. I don't want a squabble on a political argument the size of a dime when we have the potential to embrace the infinite within our own consciousness, individually and collectively. We will bypass these institutions. We will not participate in them. Okay. Let's bring that ego down. Let's bring the ego down now. Let's bring the ego into a gentle landing. Otherwise, I'm going to be unbearable in the car with my wife. Did you see me, Laura? Did you see the bit where I went limitless consciousness? Yes, it was very good, dear. It's very good. You're so clever. You've done so well. And remind us again, you just went to a comprehensive... Well done. And you overcame addiction. Well done. You've educated yourself around gender and sexual politics. Well done.
Okay, final one. Final question.
Pain. This lady, my aunt, asked me, what helped old Russell to become new Russell? Pain, suffering, loneliness. So if you are feeling pain, loneliness, suffering, if you feel that you are not good enough as an individual, if you feel inadequate as a male or a female or whatever it is that you are, if you don't feel good enough, if there's some external code or barometer that you're holding yourself up against and you feel inferior, I know what that feels like. That's the way that I feel. The pain led me to consider that the truth could be more beautiful than I had yet imagined. The pain led me to consider that there might be new ways of connecting to myself and to other people. The old Russell died like the old systems of egotism, individualism, and materialism will surely die as the new thing is born within us. So it was pain, loneliness, inadequacy, inferiority, worthlessness, not being able to trust other people, the love of other people, the acceptance of other people nurtured me and helped me to be reborn. Thank you.
Well, sadly, that's all the time we've got for today. Thank you so much, Russell Brand. It was amazing.
You're so
incredibly
patient.
enlightening.
Ladies and gentlemen, Russell Brand.
I just got to spot